Hello. I'm going to continue to read some more from the Talmud of Jmmanuel. Superstition. Aberglaube. Superstition. Demonia in Greek. Superstitio, and also diffidentia in Latin. In Middle High German, the actual meaning of the first constituent of the word is uncertain. Traditionally, superstition means as much as foolish, poor, led into the unreal, deviant, senseless belief. Since the 15th century, the term Aberglaube, superstition, is defined to identify that old, folkish or accepted, and alleged or genuine product of experience or product of belief or product of wisdom, which does not coincide with theological rationalism or with scientific rationalism. Superstition corresponds to deluded belief, faith, like actual belief, faith, where the human being believes in the effect and perception of unreal phenomena, in forces and figures, etc., that are against the laws of nature. Due to the religions themselves, a superstition is designated as something unreal and erring, etc., because the forms that appear, which make up the superstition, are not founded in the respective religious teaching itself. A superstition is based on a belief-based conviction, which has nothing to do with reality, and in no wise has anything to do with a certainty. And it must be noted here that a superstition arises from religious and sectarian irrational teachings, but it is nevertheless designated as deviant and foreign to faith. Consequently, a paradox is given. So a superstition is based on a conviction, not on a certainty, which is related to reality, of magical and mysteriously acting forces, as well as forces extracted from the mind and from religious beliefs, dogmas, which are helpful or harmful and play a role in nature as well as in human lives. A superstition finds its expression in the customs and in the habits of the human being, insofar as he or she places him or herself in the service of the superstition powers. What are commonly referred to as superstitions are remnants of the old folk beliefs destroyed by theological and scientific rationalization, and thus remnants that are no longer in their original context. For this reason, they are usually also no longer understood. As a rule, mixings with genuine folk beliefs and with foreign products of belief and products of knowledge come into being, as well as outgrowths and substitute forms of the religious and sectarian beliefs in general, particularly in times of insecurity and religious or sectarian confusion, as well as with pre-forms of scientific knowledge. In order to understand a superstition, the knowledge of pre-scientific worldviews is necessary, which show different concepts of reality, as well as its laws of participation, that is, being involved, having a part, and taking part, and also sympathy and analogy, etc., as well as different perceptions of space-time are necessary. But concisely said, a superstition is quite simply a belief opposed to another belief, as well as a belief that contradicts that which is normal in real terms and that which is realistically, logically followable, particularly in religious and sectarian regard. Deluded belief. Deluded belief is fundamentally the form of this, that something pathologically imagination-based is accepted as true, where a pathological imagination corresponds to a delusion that leads as far as to forms of schizophrenia. Such a form of delusion corresponds to a pathologically vivid imagination of something that is only of an imaginary form and thus has no real-world reference to anything, object, or anything else. Deluded belief simply concerns an illness anchored in the consciousness, as is also the case concerning schizophrenic delusions. In particular, deluded belief refers to all religious and sectarian forms of belief, which are also called belief delusions and belief delusion illnesses. In this wise, it concerns a figment of the imagination, or generally a pathological inner view without an equivalent of a real external fact, so something that is not actually or verifiably present. Thus, it is neither a tangible object or otherwise a thing, nor something fine fluidal, fine energetic, which would be effectively verifiable in some form, as for example a God who appears only as a pathologically imagination-based delusional construct. An imagination-based illness, however, exists only in the consciousness of the human being, but it does not exist in reality because it only corresponds to a pathological delusion. From an ethical standpoint, the advocating of deluded belief content corresponds to a boundless arrogance beyond compare. For in this wise, an unfounded opinion which a human being has of his or her own value is arrogantly presented and advocated. Deluded belief concerns a pathologically delusion-based imagination power based on the human being's capability to pathologically and delusionally imagine something without existence or presence within one's inner view. From this pathological, delusion-based imagination, a deceptive delusional construct comes about, which appears as a delusional mania, that is, a pathological overboarding of delusion, and often leads to fanaticism, particularly with regard to religiosity and sectarianism. Written by Billy Edward Albert Meier at the Semyase Silver Star Center on October 21st, 2010 at 10:03 p.m. Now I'd like to go into the first chapter of the Talmud Jmmanuel, written by Judas Iscariot, and he was described for Emmanuel, who was also falsely named Jesus Christ. Chapter 1. The Genealogy of Jmmanuel. 1. Behold, I, Judas Iscariot, from Kerioth in Judea, take on, write, the writing, scroll, book, history, in the arcanum of Emmanuel. Arcanum equals secret, literally case, who is called the one with Ishwish knowledge. Ishwish knowledge equals falsely translated, the one with godly knowledge, and God with us. And who is a son of Joseph? Who is a son of Joseph, of Jacob, the distant descendant of David, who was a descendant of Abram, whose lineage goes back to Adam, the father of a species of terrestrial human beings, who was bred by the celestial son Semyasa, with a terrestrial woman. And Semyasa, the maker of Adam, was thus a cousin of the commander Semyasa, the high commander of the celestial sons, who were the guardian angels, guardian messengers, guardian overseers of the Ishwish kingdom of wisdom, the great ruler of the travelers from afar. Explanation. JHWH equals Ishwish equals Kingdom of Wisdom. Old Lyrian equals Ishwish. Ishrish, JHRH, or Ishrish, equals Queen of Wisdom. Old Lyrian equals Ishrish. There's a slight variation in their pronunciation. Knowledge and wisdom. That which is to be explained with regard to Ishwishhood, that is JHWH equals male, equals King of Wisdom, and the Ishrishhood, that is JHRH equals female, equals Queen of Wisdom, as well as regard in wisdom, may be formulated and explained as follows. JHWH, Ishwish, was, for the Hebrews, in accordance with their false understanding, the unutterable name God, so a term that was falsely equated with God, that is, with other and equally worthless designations. So in this direction, various designations for God appear, such as Yahweh, 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 Jehovah, Jehovah, Yehovah, Adonai, Elohim, Yeh, Lord, Lord, He an eternal one. Moses said Exodus 3:14. Compare also Exodus 3:16 and 18. He who is who he is. Yahweh, he has sent me to you. The old spelling was Yahweh. Asher, Yahweh, equals he is who he is. The word Yahweh was pronounced by the ancient Hebrews as Yahweh or Yahweh, German pronunciation, where the stress was given on Ve, W-E-E. The correct wise of pronouncing the tetragrammaton, JHWH, however, had nothing to do with Yahweh or Yahweh, that is, with Yahweh, etc., because truthfully, the abbreviation JHWH concerned the 9-letter name Ishwish, which was unutterable for the Hebrews for some indefinable reasons. The old speaking and writing form, Ishwish, abbreviated JHWH, is a word from a language long forgotten on earth, the Old Lyrian. This language was not created on earth, but in a distant star system, and was brought to earth by space travelers. Ishwish, as a term, represents a title, which is translated into the terrestrial languages as King of Wisdom. King of Wisdom, however, means that this title is carried by a human being who is knowledgeable and educated as high as possible in cognition, interpretation, and observance of the creational laws and recommendations, and who strictly lives out the creational laws and recommendations, and is an absolute example to all those who must still be instructed, and who have not yet achieved the state of knowledge, ability, wisdom, love, and logic of a king of wisdom. A king of wisdom, thus in Ishwish, lives as an absolute example in the sense of the creational laws and recommendations, and he has the highest possible knowledge and ability for a human being in terms of the knowledge itself, as well as with regard to love, wisdom, and logic. To be a king of wisdom, or an Ishwish, means for this human being that he prepares himself for the distant future, to live in the end stages of the human physical form of existence, and that this human being, therefore, already prepares himself to cast off his physical body someday, in order to enter as a half-spirit form into the areas and levels of immaterial existence. Until this point in time of a human being is reached, until this point in time of a human being is reached, starting from the moment of his or her creation up to the period of the change from the material to the immaterial body form, 40 to 60 million years pass, reckoned according to Earth years. So this means that a human being, after his or her creation, carries a material, a physical body for 40 to 60 million years before he or she casts this off and becomes a pure spirit form, depending on how his or her overall evolution has run, faster or slower, from which the range of difference between 40 and 60 million years arises. This period, however, is only calculated according to pure years of life, during which a human being leads his material existence as such. The title Ishwish was already brought to earth at very ancient times, already millions of years ago, and it always had a leading and good tone. But among the space immigrants, there were, unfortunately, also elements that had themselves unrightfully risen to Ishwishes, without their being qualified or educated for it, and they were ones who wallowed in greed for might and behaved accordingly. They gained themselves new titles, which were understood by the human beings of earth, so namely the titles of powers, which should embody the power of creation. Creator was the most obvious appellation, which was the most plausible to the human beings of earth, which is therefore also why they let themselves be named and celebrated in this form. The step to veneration and worship was then only small. The falsification of the title Ishwish to Creator had succeeded completely, one and all, with the associated consequences. The next step of the falsification then came with the fact that the Lyrian style of writing of the title Ishwish, or the JHWH, and therefore also the pronunciation of the same, was changed, lamely into Yishfish. I think that's how it's pronounced. Yishfish, whose Lyrian style of writing was JHFH, which later, through the prehistorical Hebranos, later designations Hebrew, Hebraeos, Hebraio, I guess that's how you say it, Hebrawi, and Hebrews, etc., where it must be clear, however, that the old designations are to be understood in various languages, which relate generally and not necessarily to the ancient and current Israelite languages, suffered further falsifications. So, for example, the term JHFH equals Ishfish was changed to JHVH, which translated from the old Lyrian into terrestrial languages truly means nothing good, namely king of falseness, equaling falseness king, a title with which those among the old Lyrian human beings were designated, who led their lives and works with lies, deception, dishonor, dishonesty, might, violence, Gewalt, terror, anarchism, war, and death, as well as with exploitation and slavery. Thanks for listening, and I'll continue another time. Have a great day, and Salome.